March 21st, Judges 8 and 9. Judges 8. And the men of Ephraim said to him, What is this you have done to us by not calling us when you went to fight with Midian? And they contended with him sharply. And he said to them, What have I done as compared with you? Are the gleanings of Ephraim not better than the grape harvests of Abiezer? Elohim has given into your hands the princes of Midian, Oreb, and Zeeb. And what was I able to do as compared with you? And when he had said that, their rage toward him subsided. And Gideon and the 300 men who were with him came to the Yarden, passing over, weary yet pursuing. And he said to the men of Sukkot, Please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are weary, and I am pursuing Zebah and Salmunna, sovereigns of Midian. But the leaders of Sukkot said, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your army? And Gideon said, Because of this, when Yah has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I shall tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And he went up from there to Peniel and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Peniel answered him as the men of Sukkoth had answered him. And he spoke to the men of Peniel, saying, When I come back in peace, I shall break down this tower. And Zebah and Zalmunna were at Karkor, and their armies with them, about 15,000 men, all who were left of the army of the people of the east. Now those who had already fallen were 125,000 men, who drew the sword. And Gideon went up by the way of those who dwell in tents, on the east of Nobah and Yogbehah. And he struck the camp while the camp was at ease. And Zebah and Zalmunna fled, and he pursued them, and captured the 2 sovereigns of Midian, Zebah and Zalmunna, and shuttered the entire army. And Gideon, son of Joash, returned from battle, from the ascent of Heres, and captured a youth of the men of Sukkoth, and questioned him. So the youth wrote down for him the leaders of Sukkoth and its elders, 27 men. And he came to the men of Sukkoth and said, See, Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hand, that we should give bread to your men who are weary? So he took the elders of the city, and thorns of the wilderness, and briars, and with them he taught the men of Sukkoth a lesson. And he broke down the tower of Peniel, and killed the men of the city. And he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, How were the men whom you killed at Tabor? So they answered, They were like you. Each one looked like the son of a sovereign. And he said, They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As Yah lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you. And he said to Jether, his firstborn, Rise, kill them. But the youth would not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a youth. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said, Rise yourself, and fall on us, for as a man is, so is his might. So Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna, and took the crescent ornaments which were on their camels' necks. So the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule over us, both you and your son, also your son's son, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian. But Gideon said to them, I do not rule over you, nor does my son rule over you. Yah does rule over you. And Gideon said to them, I have a request to make of you, that each of you give me the ring from his spoil. For they had rings of gold, because they were Ishmaelites. I'm guessing children of Ishmael? Or Ishmael? And they said to him, We shall certainly give them. And they spread out a garment, and each man threw into it the ring from his spoil. And the weight of the gold rings that he requested was 1,700 pieces of gold, besides the crescent ornaments, and the pendants, and the purple robes which were on the sovereigns of Midian, and besides the chains that were around their camels' necks. And Gideon made it into a shoulder garment, and set it up in his city, Ophrah. And all Israel went whoring after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his house. Thus Midian was humbled before the children of Israel, and they lifted their eyes no more. And the land had rest for 40 years in the days of Gideon. And Jerubbaal, son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. And Gideon had 70 sons, who were his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son. And he gave him the name Abimelech. And Gideon, son of Joash, died at a good old age, and was buried at the burial site of Joash, his father, in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. And it came to be, when Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel went whoring after the Baals, and made Baal Bereth their mighty one. Thus the children of Israel did not remember Yah, their Elohim, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies round about. Nor did they show loving commitment to the house of Jerubbaal, Gideon, according to all the good which he did for Israel. Judges 9. And Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal, Gideon, went to Shechem to his mother's brothers, and spoke with them, and with all the clan of the house of his mother, saying, Please speak in the hearing of all the masters of Shechem, which is better for you, that 70 men, all the sons of Jerubbaal, rule over you, or that one man rule over you. And you shall remember that I am your own flesh and bone. And his mother's brothers spoke all these words concerning him in the hearing of all the masters of Shechem. And their heart inclined towards Abimelech, for they said, He is our brother. And they gave him 70 pieces of silver from the house of Baal Bereth, with which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless men, and they followed him. And he went to his father's house at Ophrah, and killed his brothers, the 70 sons of Jerubbaal, on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, because he hid himself. And all the masters of Shechem gathered together, all the men of Beth Milo, and they went and made Abimelech sovereign beside the terebinth tree at the post that was in Shechem. And they informed Jotham, and he went and stood on top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted his voice and cried out, and said to them, Hear me, you masters of Shechem, and let Elohim hear you. The trees went forth to anoint a sovereign over them. And they said to the olive tree, Reign over us. And the olive tree said to them, Shall I leave my oil, with which they esteem mighty ones and men, and go to sway over trees? Then the tree said to the fig tree, Come, reign over us. And the fig tree said to them, Shall I leave my sweetness and my good fruit, to go sway over trees? Then the trees said to the vine, Come, reign over us. And the vine said to them, Shall I leave my new wine, which rejoices mighty ones and men, to go sway over trees? Then all the trees said to the bramble, Come, reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, If in truth you anoint me as sovereign over you, come take shelter in my shade. But if not, that fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. And now, if you have acted in truth and integrity in setting up Abimelech to reign, and if you have acted well with Jerubbaal in his house, and have done to him as his hands did to you, For my father fought for you, and risked his life, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian. But you have raised up against my father's house today, and killed his 70 sons on one stone, and set up Abimelech, the son of his female servant, to reign over the masters of Shechem, because he is your brother. If then you have acted in truth and integrity with Jerubbaal and with his house this day, then rejoice in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the masters of Shechem and Beth Milo, and let fire come out from the masters of Shechem and from Beth Milo and devour Abimelech. Then Jotham ran away and fled, and he went to Beer and dwelt there, for fear of Abimelech his brother. And Abimelech governed Israel for 3 years. And Elohim set an evil spirit between Abimelech and the masters of Shechem. And the masters of Shechem acted treacherously against Abimelech, in order that violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid on Abimelech their brother, who killed them, and on the masters of Shechem, who strengthened his hands to kill his brothers. And the masters of Shechem set men in ambush against him on the tops of the mountains, and they robbed all who passed over by them along that way. And it was reported to Abimelech. And Gaal son of Ebed came with his brothers and passed over to Shechem, and the masters of Shechem put their trust in him. And they went out into the fields and gathered their vineyards, and trod out and held a feast. And they went into the house of their mighty one, and ate and drank, and cursed Abimelech. And Gaal son of Ebed said, Who is Abimelech, and who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal, and is not Zabel his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem. But why should we serve him? If only this people were under my hand, then I would remove Abimelech. And he said to Abimelech, Increase your army and come out. And when Zebul, governor of the city, heard the words of Gaal son of Ebed, his displeasure burned. And he sent messengers to Abimelech by deceit, saying, See, Gaal son of Ebed and his brothers have come to Shechem, and see, they are besieging the city against you. Now, get up by night, you and the people who are with you, and lie in wait in the field. And it shall be, as soon as the sun is up in the morning, then rise early and rush upon the city. And see, when he and the people who are with him come out against you, you shall do to them as your hand finds to do. And Abimelech and all the people who were with him rose up by night, and laid in wait against Shechem in 4 companies. Now Gaal son of Ebed went out and stood in the entrance to the city gate, and Abimelech and the people who were with him rose from lying in wait. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, See, people are coming down from the tops of the mountains. But Zebul said to him, You are seeing the shadows of the mountains like men. And Gaal spoke again and said, See, people are coming down from the high part of the land, and another company is coming from the diviner's terebinth tree. And Zebul said to him, Now, where is your mouth with which you said, Who is Abimelech, that we should serve him? Are these not the people whom you despised? I beg you, go out and fight them now. So Gaal went out, leading the masters of Shechem, and fought Abimelech. And Abimelech pursued him, and he fled from him. And many fell wounded, up to the entrance of the gate. And Abimelech stayed at Arumah, and Zebul drove out Gaal and his brothers, so that they would not dwell in Shechem. And it came to be the next day, that the people went out into the field, and they informed Abimelech. And he took his people, and divided them into 3 companies, and laid in wait in the field, and looked and saw the people coming out of the city. And he rose against them, and struck them. And Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city. And the other two companies rushed upon all who were in the fields and struck them. And Abimelech fought against the city all that day, and captured the city, and killed the people who were in it. And he broke down the city, and sowed it with salt. And all the masters of the tower of Shechem had heard that, and entered the stronghold of the house of El-Bereth. And it was reported to Abimelech that all the masters of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. So Abimelech went up to Mount Solomon, he and all the people who were with him. And Abimelech took an axe in his hand, and cut down a branch from the trees, and took it, and laid it on his shoulder. Then he said to the people who were with him, "What you have seen me do, hurry, do as I have done." And all the people likewise cut down each one his own branch, and followed Abimelech, and put them against the stronghold, and set the stronghold on fire above them, so that all the men of the tower of Shechem died, about 10,000 men and women. Abimelech then went to Thebez, and he encamped against Thebez and captured it. However, there was a strong tower in the city, and all the men and women and all the masters of the city fled there and shut themselves in, and went up to the top of the tower. And Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it, and approached the door of the tower to burn it with fire. But a certain woman dropped an upper millstone on the head of Abimelech and crushed his skull. He then immediately called a young man, his armor-bearer, and said to him, "Draw your sword and kill me, lest men say of me, a woman killed him." And his young man thrust him through, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, each one went to his own place. Thus did Elohim repay the evil of Abimelech, which he had done to his father to kill his 70 brothers. And all the evil of the men of Shechem, Elohim turned back on their own heads, and the curse of Jotham, son of Jerubbaal, came on them.